Well, the Four Nations tournament is wrapped up and by all accounts a huge success for the NHL. But that means the Sharks are back from vacation, feeling refreshed and trading their sandals in for their skates. Sharks hockey is back, and I'm excited to see what's in store for their final stretch of games for the season. So without further ado, let's get into it. Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Teal Teardown Hockey Podcast. I'm Dave, and I'm excited for you to be here with me today. Wherever you are and whatever you're listening from, I'm just happy that you're here today to listen to some Sharks hockey. So, the Sharks have been away for 2 weeks. They had a much-needed vacation because this before the vacation started, they were on another 8-game losing streak, which is their third one of the season where they had that many games where they hadn't won anything. They really needed a break. So this is something that was much needed for them, just to kind of get away and refresh and just take themselves away from the game. And during this final stretch of 25 games, they can actually maybe focus on just building on what they've learned and just finish the season strong, basically, and showing what they can do for next season. So the one other good thing is that they're about to enter a road trip, and this is their third long road trip of the season, but it's their last big one. So because they're going to be fresh from the vacation time, they're actually going to probably be able to take advantage of that, because after this road trip, they're kind of mostly home for the rest of the season. So at least it'll be much more refreshing time and easier schedule than it has been in the past. So that's kind of a good thing. So yeah, the Sharks are back, and it's very good. But before we get into the Sharks, I want to talk about the Four Nations tournament a little bit. It kind of sucks that the Sharks didn't have any representation this year. We did have Mikael Granlund before we traded him, so I do feel he was like our low-key guy that we were rooting for to do well, and he did. He was actually really awesome for Finley. He stood out, honestly, more than offensively, more than Barkov. Maybe Rantanen looked a little bit better than him, but Granlund made some huge goals. I mean, that last one versus the U.S., when he kind of made it a game, really fun to see. Or sorry, it was the U.S., it was Canada, where he kind of made a game, and he before Canada was destroying Finland, he kind of made it seem like it was going to be, he's going to make a hockey game. He almost had a third goal. He's going for a third goal before Crosby took him down and got the empty netter goal. But you could tell the fact that Crosby was so aggressive with Granlund, that he recognized Granlund as a threat, and that's just something that, made me proud of the guy, because he's low-key a really good player, and I think on a team like Dallas, he's just really going to thrive as a second-line center, but he might even be a third-line center because they're just that deep. So I feel like I was very happy for Granlund. Canada, USA, what can you say about that? Both those games were incredible watch of hockey. It brought so many new fans to the game, basically. And there's a lot of passion, a lot of politics in the backside we're not going to talk about. But the game itself was just what every hockey fan was dying for the last 8 years. Best on best, two teams that have a legit hate for each other, that wanted to show that they were the best in the world, and we got that. We got really good hockey that went to overtime, and it ended with the best player in the world scoring a goal. Whoever you cheered for, you still had to be happy for what that tournament was. It was just incredible, and it got us more excited for the fact the NHL announced there's going to be more international hockey by the NHL, as well as the NHL allowing their players to go in the Olympics. So it's going to be every 2 years, at least for the next 8 years, for the foreseeable future, that we are going to see best on best with these guys in some kind of fashion, whether it's by the NHL or the Olympics. We're going to get that. So that's good news. So all in all, I think the tournament was great. It was fun. Whether the fact it was meaningless or not, we can say whatever, but that was the attitude before this tournament. But the way the players played, and I think everyone said that in every kind of outlet, just the players made this tournament important, and it stretched out to everybody who were hockey fans to non-hockey fans, got people talking and excited. And I think that's a great success for the NHL, and that's a great thing for hockey fans to have, because we want it to grow. The more salary we can see, the better we can see. The excitement we get to see players getting traded and all that stuff, and our team might be able to get better players because the salary cap will grow if they make more money, right? So win-win for everybody. Great tournament. But like I was saying before, it's now over with, and now it's kind of back to business with the NHL teams. And that means we have to deal with the excitement from the highs of watching best on best to watching Sharks hockey. And as much as I love this team, we have to admit it's kind of a struggle to watch sometimes. The Sharks have had issues with just being consistent, the defensive lapses. This team isn't quite there, but at least they are still there's still hope. Well, there's some bright sides to see, and just the fact that the Sharks are just in that kind of growth mindset. We have to kind of enjoy how they're going to grow, and this break really probably benefited that. So we're going to have to see what's going to happen. So without further ado, let's just get into how the Sharks are doing right now, where they're at before we get back to the final stretch of 25 games. They're dead last in the league. We all know that. They're 4 points behind Chicago, and Chicago has 2 games in hand. So it's not likely that the Sharks are going to climb up unless Chicago has some kind of a downturn, meaning the Sharks are going to get a really good draft pick. We're at the point of the season where you just have to admit it now. The Sharks are where they're at, and it's all about that, probably that first overall pick, who's available. We're going to have an episode about that sometime in the future. But right now, it looks like we're going to probably get another good pick, which is good for the Sharks in the long term. The way Celebrini's turned out, and whoever this next guy is going to be, who probably will be NHL ready, it's pretty exciting to see. So the worst case scenario, if the Sharks finish last, even if they lose the draft lottery all the way, they can still draft third overall, which isn't bad. There's still a lot of great players, top 3. So we're going to see where that's going to be when I go into my draft episode. But yeah, the Sharks are looking good for that. So unfortunately, when it comes to the games, it's going to be pretty tough. It's going to be a slog to watch that. But there are some positives. For example, while they are dead last in the league, they're 26th in the power play with 17.9%. Not the best, but at least they're not so terrible that you're like, okay, this is just to give me 2 minutes for the other team to take a break. No, the Sharks can still score when they can once in a while. They still have some offensive weapons in Macklin Celebrini. Tyler Toffoli is just the constant who always finds ways to score goals in his own way. You have a great disher in Eklund. Zetterlund's are a great power forward. So there's still some excitement to watch, even though not all the time they're going to score. There is still a little bit something there in that first power play unit. Their PK, again, not the worst, 75.4%. Sometimes it does feel like that goal is going to go in every time, but they are okay in the PK. We'd have some solid penalty killers. One in Jake Wallman, who has struggled a little bit before the break, but I think he's going to, after the refreshing break he's had, I think he's going to feel a lot better. He's going to play a lot better. Alexander Wenberg is back. He's been practicing in the lines, and he's a good defensive forward that the Sharks have. So there is some positivity here that there's some things that we can look to see how they improve on that. All basically I'm just trying to say is that there's only up to go after this. They're not at the bottom, but they can crash a little bit. Hopefully not, but they can also go up. And with this break and everything and everyone coming back, I think that's going to be a good thing for everybody all around. I think the Sharks could surprise us during that stretch. I'm kind of torn on it right now because we've suffered so much this season. You kind of want them to get that pick now because we just have 25 games left. But at the same time, you want these guys to get confident, to get better. And you want to have that feeling that, okay, next year's going to be better. So I do want to see some improvement because we have seen it slowly, but I think that we can see even more from these guys at the end of the season. So hopefully we have to see that. Now, one final interesting thing I noticed is that with the 57 games that the Sharks team has played, only 3 guys have played a full 57 games. Luke Cunnin, Mario Ferrero, and Fabian Zetterlund. So they're the only guys that have played the whole season that have either been, I guess, mostly healthy enough, because most people it's because of injury reasons. And when it comes to the younger kids, Graf or Guschin, who's gone now, it's probably because they're just and Will Smith as well. It's more for load management or things like that, or just because they're too young, they're not playing the full season. But it is interesting to see just that how many Sharks have played through this team throughout the year. But yeah, that's where the Sharks are at this season. Macklin Celebrini is second place in points. He has 40 points. Technically, Mikael Granlund has 45 points, but he will be surpassed eventually. Celebrini is still on a scoring tear. He's not quite a point per game, but for a rookie, it's still remarkable numbers. The fact that he's going to lead a team, even if it's a kind of a basement team, he's going to lead that team in points. It's pretty remarkable. What's more to say about this kid? Also, Eklund could be the points leader as well. He got 40 points. He's got 23 assists and 17 goals. 29 assists and 11 goals. Celebrini is the other way around. And, he's just more of the disher of the team. Who knows? He could actually lead the team in points too, which would be kind of cool too. Two young-blooded guys for the team to lead the future of the Sharks would be great anyway. So I'm cheering for either one. Obviously, a little bit more Celebrini because he is the future. But it's actually kind of interesting to see those 2 guys go. And Tyler Toffoli is actually rounding out the top 3 of current Sharks in points. 36 points in 54 games. Like I said, the constant. He's the type of guy that, sometimes you may not see him because you think he's invisible, but he's always trying out there. He's always going to the dirty areas. He knows he's got the skill to score nice goals, but he also does the hockey things right. And just to have him with that experience, and he's still a capable player for the Sharks, it means a lot. It's a really, really important guy to have. And I hope that Greer finds these kinds of guys in the offseason again to help kind of, solidify this lineup and help build up the young players who are going to be our future superstars of the future. The one final thing in terms of where we're at for the team is our goaltending. So last week we talked about the trade deadline and what we can possibly get. Basically, these guys are up for the show. We want them basically to go out there and prove what they can get, and we can probably trade one of them for some kind of an asset, some kind of a future, even a draft pick. We want them to look good, but right now they're not that great. Georgiev is 10-18-0. He's got 3.66 goals against average, 0.875 save percentage, and Vitek Vanecek's 3-9-2 with the Sharks the whole season. So this is all the Sharks numbers. 4.01 goals against average, and he's got 8.78 save percentage. So both these guys are pretty horrendous. It's likely that we're not going to get anything for them. There's not like, if a team wants a goalie, like we already gave up Blackwood. He's the one that the teams that need a goalie, they got it. It was Colorado, and we got some pretty good stuff back. And I think it's going to be a stretch to even say we could get a late round pick for these guys, because you'd have to be really desperate. If you're a contending team, you want a goalie that you know when your number one guy's down, you can get like a 1B guy that's going to be able to kind of like fill in the role. And so far, it's looking like none of these guys will. And with 2 weeks left before the trade deadline, it's hard to say that we're going to see any of them get traded for anything. But, anything can happen. So maybe if they pull on let's say Georgiev plays tonight and he has a crazy stretch of hockey, maybe they can get something for him. But what do you do if you're Warsofsky? That's the question, because now it's so late. You can't go 1A, 1B, 1A, 1B unless they're really, really bad. You can't play one and the other every game because there's not enough games to show them off to try and trade them away. So I say whoever plays tonight, if they have a really good game, play them again, because we have to try and see if we can get something for them and get assets back, because the Sharks right now are so thin on any assets that it's not like you're going to get anything back. I think what Greer can do, and this is the second, the part we're going to talk about, the third part. But yeah, right now, actually, I'm going to stick to that. We'll talk about that part later. So part 2 is the lineup decisions. So right now, we're seeing what the lines were. I think Shang Peng on, I think Friday talked about what lines were going on in practice. So we're seeing Eklund, Celebrity, and Tafoy play together, which makes sense. That's your highly skilled line. You want to get them together. Wenberg is back. He's on the second line, centering Will Smith and Fabian Zetterlund. And that's pretty much your top 6 scorers right there. So Wenberg, he obviously has had some games where he's just lit up the league, especially when the Sharks beat Utah and he scored those 2 huge assists, won those 2 faceoffs to help the Sharks win that game. He showed how he could be a solid kind of a guy. But yeah, like he's not that pure goal scorer. Like he's nothing like Granlund, basically. He's a good stopgap for now. But this is our top 6. These are our scorers. These are the guys we're gonna roll with. And yeah, there's nothing else I could say. Like Warsofsky's job is he has his work cut out for him, because he can roll these guys around and see who's gonna do what. But it's not going to be that great. We have Graf, Sturm, and Cunnin as the third line guys. Now, Sturm being a third line center, I think on a contender he's going to be a solid fourth line guy. For the Sharks, he solidified that fourth line chemistry of being the fourth line grinders with Grundstrom, and whoever they kind of reset. They had Delandria down there, they've had Goodrow down there, and just whoever was down to that third line pairing showed how really good they were together. So Sturm is best as a third line guy, but Warsofsky and Greer probably want to show him off, because he's one of our guys that's capable of netting something back if we trade him. So keeping him on the third line is not a bad thing. Give him some more minutes. Colin Graf is another guy that's going to be part of that line. He's been practicing on the left wing with them, and obviously he's going to hopefully be more of a scoring type, but on the left wing, we're obviously clogged right now. So Graf obviously is going to get a little bit more ice time as a third line guy. Maybe see some scoring with him, but I just think with Sturm and on the right side, Cunnin, it's going to be hard, because we saw even when Will Smith was on the third line with these kinds of guys, it's hard when you're a skilled guy to play with these unskilled guys, because you're not the guy who's driving the plays. Like there's very few great hockey players that are so good they make their other players better. So when you're a skilled player like maybe Graf is, it's harder to kind of get that, but at least he's going to get some NHL minutes. And then fourth line, you got Grundstrom, Delandria, and Goodrow playing. So that's one where I'm kind of iffy on it. There's no pure center. Delandria has played center before. Goodrow's also played center, but he's on the right wing in this case. So you could rearrange them left and right, but there's no guy you can be confident as a center. Because being a center, it's more than just winning faceoffs. You have to be able to play defensively. You're the first guy back for your forwards, and you're usually trying to set up the play in the offensive zone as well. So you need to have a guy that's good at all that kind of stuff and really skilled. And as much as Delandria is a tough guy, he's not that guy that can really put the Sharks to the next level. And as the extra 2 guys that were there for practice were Duer and Costin. Costin's is a tough guy. I think that you're going to want to show him off for the next couple of weeks, because he's the type of guy that is good for the playoffs. You want to keep him in the fourth line. He's a tough guy that'll kind of keep the other teams honest a bit. So he's another guy that Greer would want to consistently tell for Warsofsky, play him a little bit more, because you want to see him show him what he can do. But we'll have to see what works out there. In terms of the defensive pairing, so you got Wallman and Thrun. Ferrero, Liljegren, Mukmadula, and Thompson are the guys that are playing together, and then Vlasic's the extra guy. So in terms of this, there's nothing much I can say about that. Ferrero and Liljegren have been playing together all season long. You got your Mario Ferrero is always just the all-around heart and soul guy, and he's always paired with that like offensive defenseman type of guy. So this makes sense that why they've been kept them together for so long. And I think Ferrero's always needed that kind of like solid guy, because when you're switching around your defensive pair all the time, it's so hard to get used to how they play. I know that they're pros and they practice together, but when you have that solid partner that you know everything about, it's better for you. So Liljegren and Ferrero obviously haven't been the best together, but at least that there's this constant there. The Wallman-Thrun combination, I mean, Wallman's been the best defenseman for the Sharks. Nothing much to say about that. He should be the first defenseman pairing. Thrun, I feel like we're kind of just trying to test him out and see what he is. He hasn't been outstanding, but he hasn't been terrible either. He's been a really good third pairing guy because he's seen limited minutes. With limited minutes we see, he's been okay. Obviously, there's been some defensive lapses, but that's throughout all the defensive lineups, so what it is. But having with Wallman, I guess, is an okay thing. He's still a constantly good guy. Give him more minutes, maybe we can see what he's actually made out of. I'm just not really confident it's going to be anything special. I think the Sharks really need a really solid right-handed defenseman, right-sided defenseman at least, and we'll have to see if Greer is up to something maybe, and you can get somebody like that. Again, we talked about this in our trade special last week, but there's a lot of guys that are available that could fill in that role, which would be pretty sweet. I think Seth Jones is like the dark horse because the Sharks can afford him, and he's the type of guy that if he waives his no-trade clause, could really thrive with the Sharks and really turn himself around. And then maybe in his last season of his contract, the Sharks can retain his salary and swap him off for something good, or he'll re-sign for some cheaper. So I think with that toughness is what the Sharks need in the back end, and that's where it's really lacking. Wallman's kind of doing everything right now. He's the offensive defenseman. He's a defensive defenseman. He also has the toughness that the Sharks lack everywhere else. But yeah, so I think that's what's really missing is that top-end right-sided guy. We'll see if Riker has anything up his sleeve. But right now, Thrun being a stopgap is okay, I guess. And then the third pairing, Mukmadula and Thompson, that's your rookie, raw team, very, very raw duo. Mukmadula's had some shades of kind of invisibility, but sometimes he's been good sometimes. His size is great. I just wish I could see more out of him physically because the Sharks need that right now, and he has the size to do it. That's not his game, and I get it. But if you could just show that a little bit more in the NHL, I think he's going to really stick to be a really solid, at least top four defenseman out here. But right now, he's been okay, nothing amazing. Jack Thompson, on the other hand, I think there's a lot more potential there. He hasn't shown a lot of it in the NHL. There's some flashes of greatness, but right now as a third pairing guy, just get some NHL minutes and you see what you can do. Third pairing, nothing wrong with that. So with that, Vlasic being the extra guy, I think when Ferrero, if Ferrero gets traded or if someone gets traded in the defensive thing, I think he'll pick it up, that spot. He's just the type of guy now. His injuries have gotten to him. He's still a decent guy. There was that, when he came back, he had that one goal, and there's a little bit of that, it lifted the team up a little bit, but he's not the guy he used to be, obviously. It's kind of sad to see. We're kind of just riding out his contract without having to buy him out. There's really no sense in buying him out with a guy we don't have to worry about salary cap issues right now, and he's still good to have for the team. The teammates still like him a lot, unfortunately, but he's just like that seventh guy right now, just skating around. So what I want to talk about is that compared to the Barracuda lineup, the Barracuda are struggling right now. They're losing more games than they're winning, and they're completely a different team we thought they were in October when they were and they're undefeated for so long, and they're just right behind the Calgary Rangers, who are having a crazy good season, even better than we could have assumed. They've just dropped off the list. And I think it's because the Sharks have been calling up some guys to try and see what they have, which is, credit to the Sharks. They're trying to figure out what young guys are capable right now to try and get their team going. But I think by changing the chemistry of the Barracuda, it's hurt their chances. And bringing Askarov up, for example, I know he was dominating the AHL for a while, but now he's back and he's kind of struggling again. I think by bringing them back up and down again, it kind of messes up their chemistry and their flow. And I think that actually hurt the Barracuda a lot now. So I know that once the Shark season is over, if the Barracuda make the playoffs, all the guys who are capable of going are going to go there. But I also think that there's a chance that they don't even make the playoffs right now with the way they're playing. And I think it's a lot to do with how they've been throwing people around right now. Podorowski was a nice feel-good story, but I think when he was playing the best he could in the AHL, he was dominating the league. He took over for the most points for the Barracuda. I think that losing him was a big deal, and then bringing him back, it's kind of weird to get everything back together because the lines keep getting shuffled down there. Bordeleau is the third line winger, and now he's first line again. And now they've got Pavel Regenda playing the second line wing for Barracuda. it's kind of all over the place, and it's kind of weird to see that Gushchin and Cardwell, they played in the third and fourth line wing the last couple of games, considering they're supposed to be our future there. So with Cardwell, I think they're just trying to give him like that kind of like a role that he will have in the NHL. Excuse me, I have like my nose is like all runny right now. But they're trying to give him like a role to have in the NHL right now. So the fourth line wing is kind of where he's probably going to be in the NHL. I don't see him going anywhere higher than that. Maybe if he's a good third line kind of a grinder, like a Goodrow back in his prime. But I think realistically, the way he plays is more of a fourth line thing. But right now, like this team is very, very fragile. Is the best way to put it. They're falling apart a little bit. They're not consistent, and I think it's because there's guys coming up and down. When Graf was down for the Barracuda, he was playing very well, but now he'd probably rather be playing in the NHL right now. But unfortunately, he's without them. I think the Barracuda need these kinds of guys, and it's kind of what's lacking right now. And their defense right now, Luca Cagnoni's really been their only constantly good defenseman offensively. I think he's going to be in the Sharks next year. I think he's just that good, and he deserves a shot. I think that's why that at least they have the Sharks management has the wherewithal to know not to put Cagnoni into the NHL yet, because defenseman is always a harder adjustment. And number two, to bring him up and down is just going to mess up the Barracuda even more. I think keeping him here is the best thing to help the Barracuda do something. But with Askarov, I think he should stay in the AHL. I don't see, like I said, Georgiev or Vanacek being traded at all. So I think this is our duo for the rest of the season. Barring someone getting injured, I think Askarov should stay down there, dominate the league, try and get the Barracuda to the playoffs, and get them to go somewhere. Because even if they make it, it's going to be really hard to beat Calgary. Calgary looks like a really, really dominant team, but that's why you play the games, and the playoffs are the type of tournament that like anything can happen. So even if the Calgary Wranglers are having a great regular season, the Barracuda could upset them if they can get into the playoffs. And right now, we're talking about that, which is crazy to me to think about right now, is that they can't make the playoffs. There's a chance they're not going to make the playoffs. So that's kind of making me nervous about that. But speaking to the Calgary Wranglers, the Sharks are their first team they're going to be playing is their father team, their top team, the NHL team, the Calgary Flames. So tonight, the Sharks are back, and they're going to be playing the Calgary Flames in Calgary at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. It's a pretty big game. Calgary is right now just outside of the wild card spot. They have 60 points, just 3 points behind Vancouver for that spot. They play the same amount of games, and Calgary is trying to prove that they're not a joke. Everyone kind of wrote them off this year. I know a lot of people thought they're going to be last place in the league this year because they were just that bad last year. And things have turned around a little bit. They're not like world beaters, obviously, but the real reason that they are up there is the rival for the Calder Trophy, Dustin Wolf, right now for Celebrini's Calder Trophy. He's playing amazing goaltending for Calgary Flames. Celebrini, it's going to be kind of cool just to see if he scores against Wolf. That'd be kind of a cool story. But these two guys are obviously going to be neck and neck for the Calder Trophy this year, so that's kind of the cool storyline going into it. But the Flames are going to be playing with a lot of heart. They're going to be trying to obviously be the Sharks. They're looking down on the Sharks, saying, we're not this team. We're not a basement team. We're capable of making the playoffs. And they're refreshed just like the Sharks. Everyone has an even slate. So the Sharks better be ready because the Calgary Flames are going to be bringing it. And there's a lot of guys that Calgary's also kind of in flux. They could either trade some guys or they could buy this trade deadline to try and boost their team to make the playoffs. If I were the manager, I'd probably sell. But who knows? Right now they have a lot of grit, and this is what the Sharks are lacking in terms of defense especially, is that kind of grit. So the Sharks better be ready because the Calgary Flames are going to be very physical tonight. I'm very confident about that. So in terms of their top point getters, we're looking at Jonathan Huberdeau, who's kind of been a butt end of a joke since the Tkachuk trade. He got re-signed with Calgary, and he's still, as much as people like to rip on him because he had that great season, and I think that probably overhyped him a lot more when he got over 100 points with the Florida Panthers. I think that he's more of like your point per game kind of guy, and he's under that right now, but he's leading the team in points with 41 points in 55 games. Nazem Kadri, who has been in the trade talks, and I think if the Calgary Flames are smart, they could trade him. He's the most tradable asset, I think, for the Calgary Flames if Kadri wants to waive his no trade clause, after all, because he does have one. He's got 19 goals and 21 assists, 40 points. He's a hard-nosed guy. He's the type of guy that plays with his heart in his sleeve, and he's the type of guy that when he was younger, he would kind of lose his eyes would go red, and he would end up doing something crazy and getting suspended usually, but he's kind of tapered that down. He's learned how to become a champion with Colorado. He's a solid guy any team could probably get. But right now, he's going to be the top line center for Calgary. So the Sharks better be ready because it's another tough guy the Sharks got to outsmart and beat and just use their physicality to just top him. And Mackenzie Weegar's third in points with 31 points in 55 games. Another hard-nosed kind of defenseman. He's probably got a little bit more to prove because he's someone who got snubbed for Team Canada. A lot of people thought he should have made that team. But he's a really good offensive defenseman. And actually, he's like at the top three, he's a plus 11 compared to Kadri and Huberdeau, who are actually minus guys. So he's actually pretty good. Like, considering the Calgary Flames are kind of iffy and there's a lot of minus players there, he's shown to be pretty solid. So, yeah, that's another guy that Sharks have to worry about. I think the Sharks are probably coming back into this game. I don't even know if they're going to win or lose. I can't just say for sure they're going to win or lose any game. The Calgary Flames are going to be coming very hard at the Sharks. So the Sharks have to be very, very prepared for this team. I think they can beat them. The Sharks could beat the Calgary Flames, but also the Flames are going to be playing pretty hard. This is one of those games where it's like a warning for like the bottom team could actually upset the top team is one of those things. But yeah, the Calgary Flames are going to be ready. But the next game tomorrow night against the Jets is the one the Sharks will have to be prepared for. This is just a great team. The Jets are the best in the league. And in their division, Dallas is no slouch themselves, but they're 9 points behind Winnipeg. So this is how good Winnipeg has been. The only team that's even close enough that we could talk about in terms of how good Winnipeg is Washington, who's 1 point behind in the East. Other than that, in the West, there is no one else as good as Winnipeg. And say what you want how they are in the playoffs. This is the regular season, and this is their bread and butter. Hellebuck is probably going to be emotionally pissed about what happened during the tournament, although I think they're probably going to play their backup against the Sharks because that's just, it's the Sharks. So they usually play your backup for those situations. But either way, the Jets are no slouches either. They have Kyle Connor, their huge goal scorer, who got snubbed for the Team USA, so he might be showing some kind of, want to prove it, as well as Mark Scheifele. That's two guys. He got snubbed by Team Canada. Another guy wants to show, prove why he's that good. And he's been on a tear the last few weeks. He's got 31 goals in 63 games, 32 assists. 63 points in 56 games, 31 goals in 56 games. And he's been on a tear. He's going to have something to prove as well. Gabriel Vagliardi, he's got 51 points in 56 games as well. That's from that Pierre-Luc Dubois trade. He's one of the players that came back from LA. And that was one of the best shrewd trades that Winnipeg ever did. They got two really solid NHLers from that trade. And Vagliardi, I can't even say his name properly. He's the one that, he's one of the probably the best guy that came back out of that trade. And like this team, if you just look down this list, like there's so many like point a game guys that are like close to getting a point a game. This team is going to be very, very tough. I don't think the Sharks are probably going to have it in them to beat this team, especially from a back-to-back traveling from Calgary to Winnipeg the next game. I'm going to have a hard time saying that the Winnipeg Jets are going to lose this one, but you never know. It's hockey, and that's why things are unexpected. The Sharks might surprise us this week, which I'm hoping to see. And then finally for this week that we're going to talk before the next podcast is Thursday versus the Habs. Now, this is a team the Sharks, on paper, are capable of beating. The Habs are nowhere near a playoff spot right now. They are 6 points behind it, and at this point of the season, although it seems like it's close, you're talking about other teams that can also climb around above you. It's really, really tough to get into the playoffs with like 25 to 30 games left. So the Habs are probably on the outside looking in. They have a lot of young talent, though. That's very good. So the Sharks have to be prepared. And they're a little bit better on paper than the Sharks. But of all the teams they're capable of beating, it is the Montreal Canadiens. We'll have to see how that works. They still have a lot of good stars in there with Nick Suzuki, Cole Caulfield. Lane Hutson's having another kind of Calder Trophy season that's going to rival Celebrini's Calder Trophy. So it's going to be fun to see, which one of these guys who's going to win it, because they're all arguably having such great seasons. Obviously, I'm biased. I'm going to pick Celebrini because the way he's been taking over as the first-line center and all the responsibilities he's had, he might be the first guy to be a point a game out of 18 players to ever do it as a rookie. So that's something I'm kind of rooting for. But yeah, so it's going to be fun to see that kind of like storyline again, the Calder race against each other. That's probably going to be talked about in both broadcasts. But the Canadiens, a team that the Sharks are capable of beating, they should be able to punch up their weight. Plus, we'll have to see. And the team they don't have to worry about as much physically. So they're going to have to play, Calgary and Winnipeg. On the plus side, the positive side you can look at this is that they're going to have that physical edge and probably have that in them. That they'll be able to kind of like to translate that to kind of force themselves with that anger they'll have onto Montreal, who's not as much of a physical team. Or the worst case scenario is that they might be worn out from those two physical games and Montreal just have their lunch with San Jose. So who knows what's going to happen there. We'll have to see. Cole Caulfield is the lead scorer. He's got 26 goals with that team. Nick Suzuki's got 52 points in 56 games. No one is a point a game, but that's not their team style anyway. Yurov Slavkovsky, who's kind of underrated right now. He's got a lot of assists, 22 assists in 53 games. He's still not like the stud they kind of picked him out to be, but he's still a pretty good guy, and he's still young. Who knows what's going to be in the future? Right now, he's not standing out so much, but he's fourth in points for that team, so who knows what's going to happen. So that will be our 3 games for this week that we're going to talk about here. I think out of all of them, like I said, the Habs are the ones the Sharks are probably going to have a chance to beat. If they come away with 2 points this week, I'm happy. I'm just happy the Sharks hockey's back. It'll be a little bit of a transition from going to watching best on best to watching Sharks slog away. But like I said, I'm excited just to see their growth. What are they going to do for the rest of the season? And just like as long as they're improving in certain ways, like Will Smith and Celebrini, we see them get that much better. And they can just like end the season strong so they can have a confident offseason to grow and start the next season even better. And another thing I just want to see, maybe Greer make some shrewd acquisitions. Like one thing I didn't mention in the lineups is that the Sharks are really lacking some good NHL bodies that are big. And I talked about that last week in the trade deadline. Even if it's not guys that are skilled, just get big guys. If Greer can manage to get those guys just to kind of fill out those spots, I think it'll make it easier for guys like Will Smith and Macklin Celebrini to kind of play a little bit more confident, a little bit easier knowing there's big guys that are there to kind of protect them. I think Greer should be looking at those kinds of guys, just like bigger dudes that can kind of fill out the net, especially in the defensive end that can fill like the holes in the spots that are kind of like guys are being pushed around a bit, and to bring down guys like Jack Thompson and even Colin Graff. Yes, they're great, and it's great to see them go into the NHL and do certain things, but it's good to kind of bring back the Barracuda to full strength and try and go for that playoff run, which I really want to see. So I hope he gets big bodies for the draft from the trade deadline, and get some draft picks and maybe some future acquisitions too. We'll have to see what happens in the next 2 weeks. We're looking very, very forward to with how the trade deadline pans out, who's going to leave from the Sharks and who the Sharks actually get. But that's something we'll have to look into the future. But that's that for this week. I appreciate you being with me here today. Thank you for listening wherever you are and whatever platform you're listening from. I just appreciate you being here with me today. I'm also on Instagram at Teal Teardown Hockey and X at Teal Teardown HKY. If you like the show, leave a comment. It helps with the algorithm. And leave a like. And that's it for me. I will see you next week.